HAMP participated who wound up worse off having engaged in a false attempt. Failed trial modifications often leave borrowers with more principal outstanding on their loans. Thank you.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 more minute.
Thank you. Numerous oversight bodies, including the GAO, have cited the Treasury for failing to respond to recommendations to increase the transparency, accountability, and consistency of the program. Americans for Tax Reform call the program a costly failure. Out-of-control spending has left us with a $14.1 trillion national debt that is damaging our recovery and job growth. Economists agree that reducing government spending will create a more favorable environment for private sector jobs. And that's what Americans need, a job and a paycheck, not more failed experiments in taxpayer-funded housing. I urge my colleagues to support this rule if I could talk straight. Thank you.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Time.
Gentleman from Texas reserves. Gentleman from Colorado is recognized.
Thank you. It's my honor to yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from Maryland, Ms. Edwards.
Thank you.
Gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman from Colorado. I rise today really troubled because I am opposed to terminating the HAMP program and the Neighborhood Stabilization Program. But I'm troubled because these programs have actually been very troubled. They are not perfect. They haven't helped every homeowner that we want. But we shouldn't be in a position of just destroying the programs. The Neighborhood Stabilization Program in particular was established to help communities acquire, rehabilitate, and resell abandoned and foreclosed properties as a result of the growing foreclosure crisis. There are so many economists across this country who tell us every single day that until we get the housing market straight, we will not get this economy straight. And so I believe in theory in these programs. Declining home values in my community have led to lower tax revenues for our local jurisdictions that are already suffering from the impact of the economic downturn. And the statewide foreclosure crisis has hit particularly hard in my district and the counties that I represent in Prince George's and Montgomery counties in Maryland. They have the first and third highest number of foreclosures in our state and account for 40% of the foreclosures statewide. Through the Neighborhood Stabilization Program, Montgomery County received $2 million and Prince George's County nearly $12 million in funding. This has helped in communities, and I would urge the majority to look at the benefit and let's try to fix the programs. At the beginning of this crisis, sure, there were bad loans, there were bad actors all over the place, but we also know that people have lost their jobs, and that's contributed to foreclosures, and these families should not be punished because we can't seem to get it straight. Neighborhood stabilization does stabilize communities. It doesn't do any good to have homes that are empty and in decline in neighborhoods that will never bring the market back. And so while I'm concerned about some of the programs and would like to work to try to fix these, it's not right for us to simply throw them out and to minimize the impact of helping 521,000 families to stay in their homes. And with that, I yield.
Gentlelady's time has expired. Gentleman from Colorado reserves. Gentleman from Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this time, I'd like to yield 4 minutes to the gentleman from Cherryville, North Carolina, the author of one of the pieces of underlying legislation, 839. 4 minutes, please, to the gentleman, Mr. McHenry.
Gentleman from North Carolina is recognized for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman for yielding. The bill that I'm sponsoring is the HAMP Termination Act, and it's a bill that will protect at-risk homeowners across the country from a government program that has proven to be an abysmal failure. The Home Affordable Modification Program, or HAMP, was originally supposed to help as many as 3 to 4 million struggling homeowners avoid foreclosure by modifying loans to a level that is affordable to borrowers now and sustainable over the long term. That was the intention. However, nearly 800,000 of the 1.4 million homeowners who enrolled in this program have subsequently been rejected or terminated. In his most recent testimony to Congress, the Special Inspector General for TARP, Neil Borofsky, stated, quote, "It's just not working. The Home Affordable Modification Program has to date been a failure," end quote. A failure, in the words of the independent individual to oversee this program a failure. Now, there's no doubt that people of goodwill created this program. There's no doubt about that. The intention was to help those that are facing foreclosure. That was the intention. Unfortunately, the design of this program has led to more people being harmed than actually helped. Understand that. We have a government program that harms more people than it was designed to help because it strings them along with a modified, so-called verbally modified change to their payments. And so it drains their savings. And at the end of the day, a majority of the people that enroll in this program are kicked out. And they're left not only with their savings depleted, which is bad enough that a government program strings people along for that, but it also ruins their credit rating because this government program only verbally modifies their loan terms. In the end, you have folks that have depleted their savings, ruined their credit, and lost their house. And this is a federal government program paid for by the American people's tax dollars. It is an abject failure, and worse than that, it's destroying people's lives. And I would ask my colleagues to vote for this rule. It allows for a number of amendments, some of which are wise, others that I think are very flawed from my colleagues across the aisle. But this HAMP program, we have to come to a consensus on it. All the folks that oversee this, nonpartisan, bipartisan, have all looked at this and described it as a failure. So if we can't eliminate this government program, then I ask my colleagues, what government programs can we eliminate? Vote for the rule, and please ask my colleagues to vote for the HAMP Termination Act as well. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Texas reserves. Gentleman from Colorado is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to yield 1.5 minutes to the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Clark.
Gentleman from Michigan is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
You're right. It's all about debt. Debt. Our homeowners, they're very concerned about debt. It may not be the federal debt that their grandchildren may have to pay decades from now, but it's definitely that mortgage payment that's due next month. That's the debt that our homeowners cannot afford to pay. So here's what I'm asking this Congress to do. Hold off on cutting back on these foreclosure initiatives before we directly help our homeowners. And we can help them in a way that won't cost much more money. As a matter of fact, let's give homeowners something that they typically don't have when they're facing foreclosure, and that's time. Time. Time to find a home buyer to pay off their mortgage. Time to get more income to pay off their bills. And most importantly, the time and the leverage to voluntarily negotiate with a mortgage servicer that typically will keep losing their loan modification papers until the homeowner runs out of time. Time. I'm asking this Congress to first do this. Freeze all foreclosures to those homeowners who deserve the help and who can afford to stay in their homes and maintain their homes. That's the best way to stop our property values from dropping, from providing the revenue that our police officers and firefighters and emergency medical providers definitely need. And finally, that's the best way to help save family homes by providing time to our homeowners. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Colorado reserves. Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask, if I could, the time remaining on both sides.
Gentleman from Texas has 7.5 minutes remaining. Gentleman from Colorado has 17.5 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to notify my friend, the gentleman from Colorado, that I do perhaps have additional speakers, but we have an inequality in time that's remaining. I don't know if the gentleman would like to run down that time to where we have an equal distribution.
I thank the gentleman. We do have several speakers.
I reserve my time.
Gentleman from Texas reserves. Gentleman from Colorado is recognized.
Thank you. It's my honor to yield 1.5 minutes to the gentlewoman from Hawaii, Ms. Hirono.
Gentlewoman from Hawaii is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
I thank the gentleman from Colorado for the time. I rise in strong opposition to H.R. 861, the Neighborhood Stabilization Program Termination Act, NSP. We keep hearing from the other side about wasteful government spending. Nothing represents wasteful government spending more than the continuing billions and billions of dollars of taxpayer money that we give to big oil, which is making record profits. This bill continues the Republican assault on the middle class and the working people. For the sake of our communities, we cannot afford to terminate NSP. By redeveloping foreclosed and abandoned properties, this program is stabilizing neighborhoods nationwide. This not only increases property values, but also reduces the number of foreclosures. NSP provides a lifeline to struggling families who are trying to secure affordable housing or simply stay in their homes. Like the rest of the country, Hawaii has a foreclosure crisis. We rank 10th in the nation in the rate of foreclosures. The $19.6 million in NSP funding that Hawaii received is helping our communities in the greatest need throughout my state. The City and County of Honolulu will use these funds to redevelop vacant properties and build 2 affordable rental housing projects in Ewa and Waianae. In Hawaii County, an affordable rental housing project will be built on vacant property in Kailua Kona. In the counties of Maui and Kauai, NSP funds will be used to buy and rehabilitate abandoned or foreclosed homes and residential properties throughout both counties. So you can see that this is money that is not represented as wasteful spending. Our communities need our help. Vote against this bill.
Gentlelady's time has expired. Gentleman from Texas continues to reserve.
Continue to reserve.
Gentleman from Colorado is recognized.
Thank you. It's my honor to yield 1.5 minutes to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Andrews.
Gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Unanimous consent to revise and extend my...
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my friend for yielding. Mr. Speaker, as we began this week, there were 15 million unemployed Americans looking for this Congress to work together to try to get something done for entrepreneurs and small businesses to create jobs. What has the Congress done? Yesterday, the majority managed, only with the help of a few dozen Democrats, to keep the government running for the next 3 weeks because they couldn't agree among themselves as to what to do with the budget. Today they're taking up this bill that, rather than fixing a flawed program, they just rip it up from the roots and throw it out. Tomorrow, they're going to pull the plug on National Public Radio. Now, I would suggest, if you're like some of those 15 million Americans who are spending the day at the public library in front of Monster.com, or looking at the want ads in the newspaper, wearing out your shoe leather to figure out where your next job is going to come from, this has not been a great week. 11 weeks the majority's been in control. No jobs bill, no jobs plan, no jobs idea, not one word, not one bill, not 1 minute. The priorities of this majority are wrong. Republicans and Democrats should come together, work together to create an environment where small businesses and entrepreneurs can create jobs for the American people. 11 weeks, no jobs, no sense of priorities. That's the record of this majority. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was just reminded by the gentleman, Mr. Micah, the favorite son of Florida, who's the chairman of our Transportation Infrastructure Committee, that the gentleman, Mr. Andrews, had referred to, we've done nothing about jobs, but the gentleman, Mr. Micah, as chairman of the committee, reminded me that this House passed just 2 weeks ago a transportation bill that had been lagging, waiting since 2009, that will add a substantial number of jobs, and that was a good jobs bill. So I wouldn't expect to get credit for anything necessarily on the floor, but at least we need to be honest about this. The Republicans did pass a bill that was about adding jobs as opposed to this massive undertaking that we are to try and save jobs that are at risk as a result of the outlandish spending and wasteful government spending that's taking place here.
Would the gentleman yield?
I appreciate the gentleman. I've got few minutes, and I do appreciate the gentleman. Secondly, the gentleman said, well, why are Republicans now trying to get rid of this? Why did we do something to fix the program? But I would remind the American people that this was a report that went to the Secretary of Treasury over a year ago. And I would ask the question, why did the Democrats, why did this administration continue a failed program? Why did they continue it That's because they were happy with it. In fact, as we've already read, 40% failure rate and thousands of more people harmed. That's why Republicans are trying to fix this, because we have tried to work. Today we're going to pass this on the floor. It's a great bill, and we're going to ask every single person to be able to vote for this opportunity. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Texas reserves. Gentleman from Colorado is recognized.
I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from New Jersey.
Gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 30 seconds.
I thank my friend. I want to agree with my friend from Texas that investing in transportation construction creates jobs. We agree with him. And I would ask the gentleman if he would support our Build America bill that offsets the deficit by cutting job outsourcers and creates more transportation construction jobs. Would he agree to put that on the floor? I'd yield.
As soon as it's on the floor, I'll consider that.
Well, reclaiming my time, we'll give the gentleman a chance on the previous question motion next week, or perhaps tomorrow.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Colorado is recognized.
I yield myself 30 seconds to respond, and I would point out that the one bill that the gentleman from Texas has pointed to as a jobs bill is one bill that contained many, many earmarks from previous sessions, also included continued funding for a bridge to nowhere in Alaska. So if this is the best jobs bill that a Republican Congress can bring forward, I think the American people deserve better, and it's my honor to yield a minute and a half to the gentlewoman from Alabama, Ms. Sewell.
Gentlewoman from Alabama is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to H.R. 861, which would terminate all funding for the Neighborhood Stabilization Program. The program has really helped families and communities in Alabama's 7th Congressional District tremendously. Our nation is recovering from one of the worst recessions experienced in our lifetime, and in my district, the economic downturn happened long before the rest of the nation began to experience it. The foreclosure rate in my district has reached 8%. These foreclosures have devastated homeowners. Foreclosures have been debilitating effect on the neighborhoods, leading to blight, decay, and reduced property values. The NSP program provides states and hard-hit cities with programs funding to help them recover from the effects of foreclosure, abandoned properties, and declining property values. The City of Birmingham, the City of Bessemer, Jefferson County, and the State of Alabama has received funding from this program. In my district, NSP program has revitalized 259 homes, relocated 69 families, and has saved at least 9 distressed neighborhoods. In speaking recently with the mayor of the City of Birmingham, Mayor Bell, about the effectiveness of this program, he informed me that the program has benefited greatly distressed neighborhoods in Birmingham. I have also heard from families whose neighborhoods have been improved because of this funding. My colleagues across the aisle want to terminate NSP, but I respectfully disagree. There is still much work to be done for our families and our communities. Without a doubt, we must reduce our national budget, and Congress must work together to make the tough cuts. However, such cuts cannot be made on the backs of our communities, families, and seniors. I respectfully ask to terminate, time.
Time expired. Gentleman from Texas is
We'll
recognized.
continue to reserve our time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Colorado.
Yeah, I'd like to yield. Yes, I'd like to yield the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Kucinich, 1.5 minutes.
Gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
You know, Mr. Speaker, and my friends on both sides of the aisle, we could very easily come up with money to save this program if we just put a windfall profits tax on the oil companies. I'm here today to point out the critical importance of the Neighborhood Stabilization Program and to urge my fellow members to vote against canceling it. Over the past decade, the people of my state and Ohio, and my district in particular, have weathered a terrible storm of foreclosures, devastating entire communities. While some neighborhoods in my district have been hollowed out by the effects of this storm, the Neighborhood Stabilization Program funds have made neighborhoods and communities safer. Those communities face the constant risk of crime and vandals taking advantage of empty structures, and neighborhood stabilization funds have been used to demolish hundreds of abandoned homes in the neighborhoods. They've helped protect existing home values. It's prevented neighborhoods from falling apart. But the Neighborhood Stabilization Program has not just financed demolition of abandoned structures. In Cuyahoga County alone, this program funded the creation of 237 units of affordable rental housing and 25 single-family home renovations and neighborhood green space improvements. It's been used to leverage non-federal money to fund the innovative land bank, a public entity that buys vacant and abandoned land and puts ownership of that land back in the hands of the public so it can be used again, often in conjunction with private development to renew and revitalize communities. Anyone who's ever spent any time in blighted communities knows they cry out for innovative solutions like the land bank. When this NSP was first being developed, I held hearings to find out how specifically HUD planned to allocate the funds. I convinced them the wisdom of using U.S. Postal Service and census tract data on residential home vacancies. Because of that, they adopted a need-based formula. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
We'll continue to reserve.
Gentleman from Colorado is recognized.
Thank you. It's my honor to yield one minute to the distinguished gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee.
Gentlewoman from Texas is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you very much. We are facing a CR of $61 billion in cuts, causing the loss of 800,000 jobs. What is more precious to America than the opportunity to own a home? The Neighborhood Stabilization Program has gone into inner city and urban areas and recaptured neighborhoods, giving them a boost of energy that they needed. There is always the opportunity for reform, Mr. Speaker, but I would simply raise the question, let's mend it, don't end it. Let's not leave cities abandoned with broken down, shackled homes that would in fact create more blight, more gang opportunities, more dangerous conditions. And yes, HAMP needs reform. But what does it mean to eliminate a program? Of course, the HAMP has a grandfather provision, but all America wants is to get these programs to work. Neighborhood stabilization works. HAMP can work. Now you're letting banks off the hook so that every day a homeowner calls, they can hear the sound foreclosed. At least the intervention allowed those hardworking Americans to keep their home and to provide for their family and to keep jobs. I yield back.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We'll continue to reserve.
Gentleman from Colorado is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, it's my honor to yield 1.5 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Cicilline.
Gentleman from Rhode Island is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. I rise in strong opposition to the bill to end the Neighborhood Stabilization Program. It's time for Americans to seriously question the Republican leadership's dedication to job creation. After 11 weeks in Congress, they've offered no jobs plan, no jobs bill. What's worse, by their own expert witnesses' testimony, the Neighborhood Stabilization Program, or NSP, supports 93,000 jobs nationally. In light of this estimate, I submitted an amendment to the NSP Termination Act that would require the Congressional Budget Office to study and report to the Congress the impact of this legislation on job creation or job loss. However, my friends on the other side of the aisle prevented consideration of my amendment on the floor of the House. Last week, the Republicans waged an attack on American homeowners by voting to eliminate foreclosure mitigation programs that help underwater homeowners refinance their mortgages, as well as assist temporarily unemployed Americans to remain current on their mortgage. All of this in the midst of one of the worst housing crises in the history of America. And now the Republicans are putting our most vulnerable communities at even greater risk. Terminating the Neighborhood Stabilization Program will damage our neighborhoods, devastate home values, and will slow our economic recovery. Now is the time to protect our most vulnerable neighborhoods, families who are struggling. And now is the time to invest in the future of our communities and help to restore the American dream of home ownership, and recognize that stabilization of our housing market is key to our economic recovery. I urge my colleagues to vote against the termination of this program. I've seen it work in Rhode Island. It's worked well. It's making a difference. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Texas, recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, once again, my friends and colleagues are talking about no jobs bill, nothing about jobs, but at least there's a purist on the floor, and that is there was one Democrat in the House voted against the Republican jobs bill, transportation bill. That was the gentleman, Mr. Polis. So I would think that he would have great standing on saying we've never had a bill that added jobs, but everybody else I'd have to question that because they voted for the bill because, in fact, it's a good jobs bill. I reserve my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Colorado is recognized.
yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
With regard to the jobs bill, I acknowledge that that was the bill that my colleague from Texas cited as the one jobs bill the Republicans have brought before it. And this was a bill that had dozens and dozens of earmarks, which is why, in standing with President Obama, I opposed that bill, including an indefensible earmark, which we proposed an amendment on the floor, which was voted down, I might add, without a single Republican vote, to eliminate funding for what I thought there was broad consensus we should eliminate funding for, namely a $300 million bridge in Alaska, it's a $70 million bridge to an island with 50 people, an additional project that's another bridge. This is an example of earmarks at their worst, of pork barrel politics at their worst. I think I'm beginning to think if the Republicans do come up with a job bill, we need to ask at what price jobs. Is it going to be so filled up with Republican pork that we have to either take it or leave it? That's a choice the American people don't want to face. Mr. Speaker, I'll be the first to admit that we can improve HAMP, we can improve the Neighborhood Stabilization Program. There's no doubt about that. And I would advance that we should be doing exactly that. My colleague from Michigan, Mr. Clark, had some excellent ideas about improving these programs. I'm a co-sponsor of a bill to provide for a capital gains tax exemption for investment in community banks to help them shore up their balance sheets. Why not look at, for instance, allowing investment properties to have the same mortgage deductibility as primary residences? There's a number of great ideas I'm sure members of both sides of the aisle could discuss and agree upon to address our housing prices. But what the answer isn't is to repeal one of the only tools we have and to replace it with silence. It's my honor to yield 1.5 minutes to the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Ryan.
Gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
I thank the gentleman, and I just want to use an example here from a district in northeast Ohio, old industrial district. We've had chronic foreclosures for 30 years. The census just came out. The city of Youngstown went from 180,000 people down to about 65,000 people. The tax base has been eroded. And in the last few years, Youngstown has been cited as one of the top 10 best cities to start a business by Entrepreneur Magazine. Site Selection Magazine said it's one of the top 10 businesses to start or grow a business. And in part, the renaissance of Youngstown is because of federal investments like this that help us downsize and shrink our community. And I find it ironic that our friends who are trying to reduce government spending, we're trying to get rid of dilapidated housing where it increases crime, prostitution, drug use. This all puts more pressure on the safety services within a town like Youngstown. So this bill to repeal this money is actually going to cost cities and rural areas more money because you're not allowing us to reinvest into these places, downsize them, shrink them, make them more manageable, and over time reduce the tax burden on the local taxpayer. These are critical investments that are needed in the United States of America. This $1 billion should have been $5 billion, not just $1 billion. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, if it worked that way, we'd be for it. I reserve my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Colorado is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, it's my honor to yield.
I'd invite
10 seconds.
I'd invite the gentleman.
Gentleman's recognized for 30 seconds.
I'd invite the gentleman to Youngstown, Ohio. He could see it for himself. Yield back.
Thank you. It's my honor to yield 1.5 minutes to the gentleman from Colorado who serves on the Financial Services Committee, Mr. Perlmutter.
Gentleman from Colorado is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. I thank my friend from Colorado. I'd invite my friend from Texas to come to Aurora, Colorado, where we've actually, with the Neighborhood Stabilization Program, had tremendous successes. This country was on its back financially 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. We're just now getting back on our feet. My friends from the Republican side of the aisle want to just pull the rug right. You've got to get strong before you can do away with some of these programs. So let's talk about Aurora, Colorado. Got $4.7 million to go and buy homes that were vacant because there had been foreclosures, which were causing blight and lots of property devaluation. Went in, fixed the home, sold them to good families. The neighborhood starts growing again. Aurora's taken that $4.7 million, turned it into $7.8 million by the sales of these properties. So the neighborhoods get strengthened, families are helped, we stop this cycle of foreclosure and tough neighborhoods. My friends on the Republican side of the aisle are blaming all sorts of things for the debt that have nothing to do with it, and they're taking away things that are really helping middle America. I'd urge them to rethink this whole bill, and I asked my friend from Colorado, I know he's seen these same things, the benefits of these programs. With that, I'd yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll assure the gentleman I will be in Aurora, Colorado, and I'll be pleased to be there this year and probably next year also. I reserve my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Colorado is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to get some items on the schedule. The gentleman from Dallas during his visit to Colorado as well. I am the last speaker from my side, so I'd like to inquire if any additional speakers have shown up for your side.
Gentleman from Texas.
I appreciate the gentleman asking. I'm through with all my remarks. I would encourage the gentleman to close, and I appreciate the collegiality the gentleman's extended me.
I yield myself the remainder of the time. Mr. Speaker,
recognized.
I want to share with you a few stories from constituents in my district that the HAMP program has helped. My office has helped a number of constituents with this program, and I'm not alone in doing that. Last year, I had a local artist who ran her own small business contact my office asking for help with her mortgage. Her income had declined significantly and unexpectedly due to the tough economy. She tried to find a second job, but it wasn't enough. With the help of the HAMP loan modification, she's still in her home today. We also helped a truck driver who had become ill and needed dialysis. Although he still received Social Security, he couldn't afford his mortgage payments without his old salary. He had nowhere else to turn, but with the HAMP modification, he was able to lower his interest rates by 2% and convert his loan from adjustable rate to a 30-year fixed and stay in his home. Mr. Speaker, the stories don't end there. HAMP has proven that it can save families on the brink of foreclosure and keep them there for the long haul. It's not the ideal program. It hasn't reached the 3 million families were initially projected, but you ask any of those 500,000 families that HAMP has helped keep in their home, and they will agree that this program works for them. Mr. Speaker, we should be focusing on jobs. Last month, I'm proud to say, our economy added over 150,000 private sector jobs, and instead of working to increase that number, we've been passing legislation that threatens to reverse the progress that has been made by creating additional uncertainty within the real estate sector and leaving more families at risk of losing their homes. Republicans promised to promote job creation and economic growth with their new majority. Instead of delivering on these promises, they've already used their majority to raise taxes on middle-class Americans, to attack the middle class, and promote their own social agenda. This is not the change that the American people asked for. It is time to get our fiscal house in order. I have to make it clear that this is not the way to solve our budget problems. Repealing a program that helps keep middle-class families in their home. Mr. Speaker, the best way to get our deficit under control is through creating jobs, not through cutting the safety net of hardworking Americans and preventing our cities and counties from revitalizing their blighted neighborhoods. Most distressing, however, is that through these bills, the promise of job creation is broken yet again. I ask my colleagues to join me and vote no on this rule and no on the underlying legislation so we can keep our promise to help all of our communities rebuild and succeed and work in a bipartisan fashion to get the very best ideas on the table about what our proper public policy response should be with regard to the housing crisis and the jobs crisis that this nation faces. I ask for a no vote on the rule and the underlying bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Colorado yields back. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank the gentleman from Colorado for not only engaging in a spirited debate here on the floor, but also for his collegiality in that endeavor. Mr. Speaker, this nation is being overrun by too high a taxation, borrowing, and spending. And just last month, we hit a record deficit, $223 billion in 1 month. That is simply unacceptable. With the debt looming at over $14 trillion and unemployment hovering still around 9%, Americans want solutions, not handouts. And that is why we are here on the floor today to protect the taxpayer and the integrity, I think, of the government rather than creating more problems, at least trying to alleviate some of those and give the taxpayer back some money. The American people ask Congress to rein in spending and for efficiency, and that is what Republicans are here to do today. We did this in an open process where every single member of this body had a chance through regular order to prepare themselves and to come to the floor today. Since Republicans have gained the majority in January, we have cut $200 billion worth of spending. First of all, by repealing Obamacare. Secondly, cutting $61 billion in H.R. 1, $8 billion last week in additional unnecessary government housing programs, and another $30 billion with this rule today. We're getting our job done. By gaining control of government spending and eliminating wasteful government handouts, the private sector can again gain confidence in our economy and the direction of the future of this country to begin investing in jobs and our economic future. After all, we finally decided last year that what we would do is extend tax cuts which will help save jobs and grow our economy. I applaud my colleagues for introducing the bills we are discussing here today. In just a few minutes, you'll see the chairman of the Financial Services Committee or his designee lead that discussion through lots of amendments, lots of ideas by members. I want to thank the young chairman of the Rules Committee, the gentleman from California, David Dreyer, for providing us such a great, open, and transparent process. I encourage a yes vote on the rule and, perhaps more importantly, on the resolution which lies before us today. We yield back the balance of our time.
Gentleman from Texas yields back and moves the previous question. Without objection, the previous question is ordered. The question is on adoption of the resolution. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, on that I request the yeas and the nays.
Yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 15-minute vote.
The House came in at noon Eastern and began debate on the rule for two bills, one of which is a bill that would end a neighborhood foreclosure program, a neighborhood stabilization program. The other is a bill that would end the so-called HAMP program, the Home Affordable Modification Program. Now, if the rule passes, they'll debate just one bill today. That would be the Neighborhood Stabilization Bill, ending that program. And if the rule passes, it'll allow for an hour of general debate and 10 amendments to be considered. That'll be the only piece of legislation on the floor the rest of the afternoon. Plenty of debate ahead, including amendments as well. This is a 15-minute vote. Yesterday, the House passed the latest continuing resolution to fund the federal government through April the 8th. This is the sixth short-term funding measure, and it passed yesterday by a vote of 271 to 158. Iowa's Steve King joined us on this morning's Washington Journal to talk about the budget debate and what's ahead.
Congressman Steve King represents Iowa's 5th District, where he serves as a Republican. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Let's talk about the vote yesterday. The House went ahead and passed a 3-week extension of the budget, the CR, that now goes to the Senate. We'll see what happens there this week, but it is expected to pass and go through. You voted against it. You're one of about 50, I believe it was 54 in total Republicans to vote no. Why?
Well, I stood up and said why in conference a week ago, and I had voted no on the previous CR. There were only 6 Republicans that voted no a couple of weeks ago on the 2-week continuing resolution. And I said that I will vote no on any continuing resolution that does not cut off funding to Obamacare. And I would include into that as an added component is the funding that goes on forward to Planned Parenthood. I'm committed to cutting off the funding to Planned Parenthood as well. And as I see this, the leverage has been this, that every Republican has now voted to repeal Obamacare in the House and in the Senate, and it was bipartisan in the House. So we need to find a place where there's enough leverage to shut off this funding. There are $105.5 billion in automatic spending that has been written into Obamacare, and as far as the scope is concerned, it's completely unprecedented. And so we have to, as an obligation, shut that funding off. The only 2 leverage points that I can see in the entire 112th Congress are the leverage points that would be the continuing resolution that funds this government for the balance of the fiscal year until September 30th, or the debt ceiling bill. Those 2 things. And as we pledge to repeal Obamacare and defund Obamacare, we have to use the tools that are at our disposal, and that's the continuing resolution. That's why I took a stand. The vote went from only 6 that voted no a couple of weeks ago to 54 Republicans that voted no yesterday. I think that makes a statement, and we'll see now how things unfold in the next 3 weeks, Libby.
As you said, 54 Republicans voted against it, 186 voted for it, and House leadership among the Republicans was encouraging a yes vote. What does this say about Republican leadership?
Well, leadership has, you know, they need to be complimented for the challenge that they have tackled and the things that they've accomplished. And I gave a floor speech last night after the vote complimenting Speaker Boehner on bringing this House back to regular order. The House was really, it devolved into the situation where it was, I think, by definition, dysfunctional. We didn't have a budget that was passed by the House. We didn't have appropriations bills passed by the House. The government was being run by stopgap measures of continuing resolutions, which is what we got handed in December of last year that funded the government till March 4th. John Boehner said we're going to regular order. He brought H.R. 1, the big continuing resolution bill, up before the House that debated all of the spending of the entire federal government under an open rule. So it had hundreds of amendments and it had hundreds of votes, and members had finally a chance, after 4 years of accumulated frustration between Democrats and Republicans, a chance to debate the issues that they care so much about. So John Boehner's putting this House back on track, functioning the way it was envisioned by the language in the Constitution and our founding fathers. It's a tough job. There's going to be a little bit of tension along the way. It's very natural, but he understands how the House works. And in the end, I think you're going to see a smooth-running Republican conference.
House Speaker Boehner said this is a small down payment on our commitment to the American people that we'd have real fiscal responsibility. What's your reaction to that statement? And if you're a no vote, how does that tally you up with that?
Well, there's a loaf of bread of the cuts here. There was $62 billion that were passed in H.R. 1, the large continuing resolution. And now, having continuing resolutions that are 2 weeks, now 3 weeks, it's a slice out of that loaf, or a slice and a half out of that loaf, however you want to define it. And roughly a slice a week might be one way to look at it, $2 billion a week. That is progress, but I also look back and see that in order to pass the extension for 2 years of the Bush tax brackets last fall, we had to do at least $212 billion in transfer payments, most of which went to extending unemployment benefits to 99 weeks. And that $212 billion wasn't much debated, but it was part of the price of getting the tax brackets extended. I think that the freshman class didn't live through that experience, so the focus on $62 billion is a higher priority in the minds of a lot of the members of the Republican conference than I believe it is. I think the highest priority is shutting off the funding to Obamacare because it's been found unconstitutional by 2 federal courts. It's been rejected by the American people. The polling says so. The election of November 2nd says so. And I'm determined to act on that and see the day that it's finally pulled out of the code.
And you've said you're willing to see a government shutdown rather than continue to fund the health care law.
Well, and I've said it in perhaps a little bit different way, in that the House is determined and committed, and I think you can see it by 3 actions of the House: H.R. 1, the CR, the 2-week continuing resolution, and then the vote yesterday. The House, especially the House leadership, is determined to provide the resources for the federal government to function in a legitimate, fiscally responsible fashion. It would be, if there's a shutdown, it would be delivered by Harry Reid as a proxy for President Obama. And so I'm willing to face that, because if we are not willing to face a shutdown that would be a result of the actions of the Senate and the White House, if we aren't willing to face that, then the President will get exactly everything that he's willing to fight for. That would include Obamacare, that would include funding Planned Parenthood, and that would not include cuts that go very much beyond where we are right now.
Congressman Steve King of Iowa. Let's get to the phones. Jacksonville, Florida. Thomas joins us on the Republicans line.
Yes, good morning.
Good
morning, Thomas.
Yeah, I've been watching Mr. King there, and we just want to tell him to keep up the good work there. Don't slack up. Don't trust them Democrats a bit. And did Bonner ask Pelosi for the key to that bipartisan room? You know, the one you lock the door when you go in there for a bipartisan bill?
You know, Thomas, I like the way you phrased that. And I was never let inside that room, so I would have no idea what that looks like. But I hope that there is a key to it, and I hope that Speaker Boehner has that, and we can carry on with bipartisan dialogue. But I will say this, that there's a completely different tone here in this Congress. And it's now, I mean, John Boehner is a fiscal conservative. He is a social conservative, and he understands how the House is to work, and he has about 244 Republicans that he's got to keep on the team. So it's a harder job that he has than the job that I have. But I think that you're going to see more bipartisan effort that's here. And it will be mostly working, I think, with Blue Dog Democrats and those conservative Democrats that have more of a common philosophy.
CQ Weekly has a piece called $100 billion from where? And they talk about how since last fall, House Republicans have been on a mission to cut $100 billion in federal spending. But the context is elusive, with different speakers defining the circumstances to suit their own preferences. Where does the $100 billion come from?
Well, we've already demonstrated where the $62 billion comes from. And
is that a goal that you have, $100 billion? Is that...
You know, if they put that out on the table, I'm very likely to vote for that. I personally have been focused on the Obamacare issue and some of the other large issues that are being funded by the federal government that I believe should not be.
And are you seeing things outside of that $60 billion of cuts in H.R. 1 that you think should also be thrown in there, too? Think more things should be on the table.
I don't know that I'm prepared to give a public list of those things, because as soon as you put that list out, the constituency base rises up to defend their funding stream. And so when you do make such a proposal, one should actually be dug in and prepared to defend it. And but I will say this. We've already found $105.5 billion. That's the automatic spending in Obamacare. That's a pretty easy one to go get. And then as we move forward on this, we'll take a look at all of these budgets. And it's actually, if I were to say it's premature, the appropriations subcommittees need to work their will. They need to look through, listen to testimony, examine all the components of the budget. I think they should go back to zero baseline budgeting and evaluate every program that we have. Through that process, the people on the subcommittees especially have significant expertise in all this subject matter. And I think they're going to produce, under Hal Rogers, the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, some serious cuts to get this government back functioning correctly again.
One of our followers on Twitter, called Forums for Justice, writes that 60-some billions in cuts out of the deficit is a proverbial drop in the bucket, and asks, where's the beef, John Boehner? So is there friction here between the Tea Party caucus, conservative members of the Republican Party, and the leadership?
Well, I'm going to say it depends on how you define the word friction. I've seen more, and I've seen it more intense than it is now. There's a certain tension that's there, because there's an agenda that's being driven by leadership, and then there's perhaps a more conservative agenda that's being driven by a core of more conservative people within the House of Representatives. But it's not a personality tension. It's not a personal hard feelings tension. It's more just, you know, if you sit around a family table and somebody wants a Buick and somebody else wants a Cadillac, there's a little friction there. And you get it resolved. We'll get this resolved, but we're not buying Buicks or Cadillacs. We're going to take this government back down to the legitimate functions of government, and we'll do it together. And this is the kind of dialogue we have to have. Some of it's inside the conference, some of it's in committee, some of it's one-on-one, and some of it's the discussion that goes on through the media. It's just the way this world works.
Jane, Democratic caller in New Jersey, welcome.
Morning, Jane.
Hi, Jane, are you with us? I think she may have left. Let's go to St. Pete, Florida. Dave, Independent Line. Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Hi there.
Morning, Dave.
Hey, all right. Well, apparently, we got a conflict of interest in our Congress. One party's bent on globalization, and the other part's bent on profit without pensions. That's why the health care's in the crapper. Everybody's working 35 years in the private sector. They have no pensions. They get used up and cast out on unemployment. Then you got the government employees. They all got pensions. They all got health care. You got the union workers. They all got pensions. They all got health care. But the rest of us are forced into, charitable hospitalization and health care? Come on. You got the lobbyists giving you guys suitcases of money. Hey, let's reevaluate the way you guys get elected, and go online and find your job.
Well, Dave, you know, first, I've spent my life in the private sector. I started a construction business in 1975. I had a negative net worth of $5,000, and I went out and bought an old beaten-up bulldozer and welded on it for 2 weeks before I could put it to work and start to earn its first dollar. I'm at payroll for over 28 and a half years, And when I came here to this Congress, I sold that business to my oldest son, and he's operating it now. No one handed me anything. I did earn it. And I do see, though, the point that you make, that government employees have more secure jobs and usually a better benefits plan than there is in the private sector. And it's true that unions have a better benefits plan than generally is in the balance of the private sector. I'd like to see our public employees, and to the extent that the union contracts could be negotiated that way, I think it's prudent to turn these benefit packages, especially the retirement plans, into defined contribution plans rather than defined benefit plans, because the promises that are out there cannot be kept. But if you tie it to the contributions, and if the employer is putting their share in, that contribution should grow. But you should use the money that's there, not the money that someone else is going to earn for the pension plan. And then with the balance of this, there are people who didn't turn out very well when they arrived at retirement. That has been the case for a long time. And I'd like to see this be a nation that people could save their own retirement plans and put some incentives in place. And I'll keep working on that issue, because I think you make a point that all of us in Congress should listen to.
There's a story in today's Washington Post coming to us from the McClatchy Tribune services. With pension plans under attack, Congress's own benefits are hefty. Lawmakers can retire to generous packages with less buy-in.
The response for that, I guess, is what you want to... you know, the packages that we have today are not the packages that many people think we have. And I believe it's 5 years to be vested in a retirement plan at all. The federal employees that make a career out of this, their plan is one that accumulates over the working career of their lifetimes. And the average time here in Congress, as I recall, and I'd have to go back and double check this to tell you I know it's fact today, is about 10.8 years time in Congress. So the pension plans for an average member of Congress aren't that great. The health care plan that's here, we contribute to that in the same fashion that other federal employees do. There's still the virus of the rumor that's been going on since the 80s that says that members don't contribute to Social Security. Well, we do. We have done so since the 80s, and we're on the same plan as the other federal employees. So it's not that great, and if I were going to retire off of what's here, and this is by the beginning of my 9th year, it would be pretty slim pickings indeed, and probably Dave and I would be in the same place. And by the way, that suitcase full of money really doesn't come my way. It's pretty hard to raise enough money to do the minimal ads to get reelected to this Congress where I come from, but it's not the case for everybody. Thanks, Libby.
Congressman Steve King represents Iowa's 5th District, which includes Storm Lake, Sioux City, and Council Bluffs. He sits on the Agriculture Committee, also Small Business, and the Judiciary. Let's hear from Richard, Republican, down in Texas. Hi there.
Hello.
Good morning.
Thank you for C-SPAN. Congressman, it's obvious that Congress is having a difficult time passing budgets and is in a habit of spending. I think we just need a constitutional amendment for a balanced budget and take it away from you all and force you into fiscal responsibility. What are your comments?
Well, I just agree with you. If we had the kind of fence built around us that we have in most of, or probably all of the states to requiring a balanced budget, then I've been through that process. I spent 6 years in the Iowa Senate, and we brought that budget into balance because we had to. And I think that's the real only solution here for this Congress. The pendulum swings both ways on who's in the majority and the particular philosophies and spending priorities. Congressman Bob Goodlatte of Virginia has brought the constitutional amendment for a balanced budget each year that I've been here and recall, and I've been an original co-sponsor on that constitutional amendment. He's working it again this year. I give him great credit for that, and I continue to help him with it, and I hope more members sign on to it and we can get a vote on the constitutional amendment for a balanced budget, move it over to the Senate. It came very close to passing in the mid-90s, and it has an opportunity in this environment too. So I'm glad you bring it up. That's what Congress needs to do, and I certainly support it.
Another Texan, this time from Fort Worth. Susan is a Democratic caller. Hi there.
Hi. Well, you know, if these new clowns, particularly in the House of Representatives, had started in on their own salaries and benefits, shut down your little clinic there with the doctor, shut down your cafeteria, do some other things. The reason the private sector doesn't have pensions is the Republicans many, many years ago fixed it so that these big corporations could use those pension funds to use as working capital in their businesses. So that did away with that, and now the people are stuck with these worthless 401 things. And, now they're going after the public sector, the teachers and everything else. It's just absolutely disgusting. You're going after health care for everybody. Who cares about the little people? You all sure don't.
Well, first of all, I pay for the visits that I make to the doctor here in the Capitol, and with all of the people we have around here, we need to have health care available to the thousands of people that are right here on the Capitol. The cafeterias, they charge a bill when you buy the food down there, and I presume their budget is close to balance, although they could be in deficit spending because Nancy Pelosi issued a ruling here over the last 4 years that there'd be only eggs from free-range hens, and the price went up, and recyclable forks and spoons, those things. So that's going on. There's a political statement being made whenever you eat in the cafeteria. But I think your focus really is to the public employees' pensions and health care. And the public employees' pensions I spoke to a little bit ago, in that I believe that those should be defined contribution plans rather than defined benefit plans. And then they would be stable, and we'd be able to see those benefits be paid out in the states, and also the federal government is closer to a defined contribution plan from my view. But then with the health care that's there, I think you'll know that I have been lined up against this health care plan, and the reason for that is I want to preserve the doctor-patient relationship. I want to preserve the free market component of this and the incentives, and I want to be able to see the research and development move forward. We have, I believe, the best health care system in the world, and I don't want to see it degrade down to that I see in other countries. And so that's where my push is, and I think that is a compassionate, constitutional, fiscally responsible view, and it gives people an opportunity to succeed and an opportunity to choose their own health care rather than have to fit into a government one-size-fits-all, which is the eventuality if this health care policy is implemented fully, and that's designed to happen by 2014. Thank you.
Congressman Steve King of Iowa. A story in the Wall Street Journal today looks at a surge in food stamp use out in the West, and it says there's been a sharp rise since the bottom fell out of the region's boom, and it clashes with the go-it-alone ethos of many Westerners. Reporting from Boise, Jim Carlton says before the recession hit, Idaho, Nevada, and Utah had some of the lowest rates of food stamp use in the nation. It was a boom time in a region that has always prided itself on self-reliance and a disdain for government handouts. But since the recession began, these three states have the fastest growing rates in the nation of participation in the federal program. Recently released figures show. What does this tell you? States not too far away from your own.
Well, that's a surprise to me. It's a surprise to me to hear that Idaho would have that kind of a jump in food stamp usage. I haven't heard any reports of that happening around in the Midwest, say in Iowa, for example. And I would want to look at the unemployment rates, the economic growth rates in Idaho, and look back at the food stamp rates and wonder if there isn't some other indicator that's there. And that's a question I'll ask some of the Idaho delegation today. It's curious to me. And I would ask them also, what's the level of immigration into Idaho? Is there a food stamp usage increase that might be coming from an increase of immigration from other states who have different habits in the go-it-alone philosophy?
Let's go to Bear, Delaware, where Lois is on our independent line. Good morning.
Good morning. I have several things that I would like to ask Mr. King. First of all, where are the jobs? When the Republicans were voted in, they said their highest priority were going to be jobs. All you people have done is go for the social pieces of, like doing away with Planned Parenthood that helps poor people.
Nays are 179.
Mr. Butterfield. Mr. Butterfield votes no.
On this vote, the yeas are 241, the nays are 180, and the resolution is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. What purpose does the gentleman from Oregon rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that when the House adjourns today, adjourn to meet at 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Without objection, so ordered. The chair lays before the House the following communication.
The Honorable, the Speaker, House of Representatives, sir. Pursuant to the permission granted in Clause 2A to Rule 2 of the Rules of the U.S. House of Representatives, the clerk received the following message from the Secretary of the Senate on March 16, 2011 at 11:08 a.m. That the Senate agreed to Senate Joint Resolution 7, Senate Joint Resolution 8, Senate Joint Resolution. Sincerely, Karen L. Haas.
The chair lays before the House the following communication.
The Honorable, the Speaker, House of Representatives, sir. This is to notify you formally, pursuant to Rule 8 of the Rules of the House of Representatives, that I have been served with a subpoena issued by the District Court of Maryland for Baltimore County to appear as a witness in the criminal trial of a third party who contacted Congressman John P. Sarbanes' office. After consultation with the Office of General Counsel, I have determined that compliance with the subpoena is consistent with the precedents and privileges of the House. Signed sincerely, Margaret Stephenson, former Constituent Services Representative, Office of Representative John P. Sarbanes.
For what purposes